Good morning, everybody. Natalie coming to you live. Spirit and coffee. Got my coffee here. Cheers, salud. So good morning to those who are on Facebook. Good morning to those who are on Instagram. Good morning to those who are on Podbean. I can't see anyone on Facebook, which is a bummer. I will keep saying that. But if you guys have want to leave comments and stuff, I will comment back later on in the day and stuff like that. But good morning to, usually Betty's on here. So if Betty, if you're on here, good morning. Or if you get on here, good morning to you. We have Michael. We have, I should write a list of the individuals and just say, hey, good morning to all you. If you're on here, if you're not, well, good morning anyway. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. So just want to get started and starting to think about how do we start to construct our life? Like, how do we really truly construct our life and sort of like create our own storyline, right? Because life is just a big story, and it's sort of like our legacy, right? It's like, what story are we leaving behind? How are we leaving our legacy? What stories are we telling? And then basically, and there's always this question: if you disappear tomorrow, then how would you want people to remember you? What would they say about you? What would they say? What did you leave behind? And some of it's in our myth, right, in our story. And so it's really cool because I'm taking a shamanic traditions course for my master's program. Now, I at first was sort of not too excited about this because I don't feel like those traditional cultures should be exploited and whatnot. And so for a while there, I was kind of like, I don't know. I questioned the integrity and the ethics behind it. But what I do love is the professor that's teaching it has a deep, 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 profound respect for the cultures and traditions of, Native Aboriginals, and also the people who call themselves the real shaman, right? The ones who were really named shaman, and sort of reading the historical context behind how shaman actually came to be. The name basically became popularized, but not everybody is a shaman, right? There's different names for healers and different practices. And Siberia is where a shaman came, and they said they think that it came from India. Anyway, I'm not going to give you a whole historical background, but you guys can read. I can tell you the book that I'm reading gives you sort of an idea of where this came from. The big thing for you guys and why this matters is that every single culture is grounded in a sort of a myth, a story. And the story that's being told sort of kind of, I don't want to say dictates, but it kind of sways the way the community works, basically. And if we look at the ancient cultures, and I think this is where America sort of has gone wrong, is we're lacking that myth. We're lacking that ability to connect to that myth, right? What is our myth? What is our story? How do we create our story? How do we tap into that? And so typically before there was a lot of different, a lot of separation, right? Before there was separation within the family unit, within everything else, there was a dialogue around it, and there was a community built around it, and there were certain practices that were followed, rites of passage, initiations, and all these things that went on. And that sort of kind of got ripped. And when we think about America, it's not, I mean, we could say Christianity could be, the story that most people follow. Okay. That's the book that they follow. Now, however, there's not a rite of passage. I mean, you could say, well, baptism and all these things, but the community itself has sort of separated. There's no sense of coming together, right? Things have sort of separated. And it's because the ideologies of America are founded in capitalism, individualism. And because of that, it's sort of like the I is separate from the rest of the world. Now, so I'd say in the Western world, we're a little bit more lost, right? We're kind of like, well, who are we really? Who are we? This materialism is not who we are. It's part of who we are. I mean, but it's not really who we are. So who are we? For those that have been brought up in a culture that tells you like, okay, dig deeper into the essence of who you are, has sort of guided or helped the individual, right, to sort of I wouldn't say identify, but identify the different maybe archetypes that exist within them, or personalities, or ways of being, are the essence of who they are, right? So there's like all these different ways of describing it. But so what is your myth? What is your story? What do you want people to say about you? How do you view the world? And I think that as a collective whole, eventually we will come together to create this interwoven story, right, that helps us to understand how to live in community together, right? Good morning, PPG. Because right now, people don't have their own story. I mean, what is yours? I mean, let's just ask the question. Do you have a story? And if so, what is your storyline? What is it telling you? What are your myths, right? And so a lot of these cultures were grounded in mythology, right? We could say that, we had Zeus, right? We got Olympians, and we had the giants, and there was a big battle, and then they rose, right? And then Zeus and the Poseidon, and and there's that big myth story, right? And then you have the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, all these things where they talk about Krishna, and and Kali, and all these warriors are battling in the sky, and there's this big myth around it, and it all has a meaning to the culture, and the culture says, because of this, we live this way, right? And there's these big stories, right? Even in Christianity, it's a big battle. There's angels, and angels came down, and there was a battle, and then there was a fallen angel, and there's all these things. And then there's Adam, and there's Eve, and she ate the apple, and this and that, and all these things, or whatever it is she ate, the pomegranate, whatever. You guys get the point, the gist. That there's these myths, and in every culture, when we look even at native cultures, they too have their myth story. We have, the great weaver of life, the great mother, this is like a spider this is like a big web, and she weaves the web, and she was the first to weave the web of life. And they talk about the sun and the moon and all of these things. And there's a purpose behind it. It sort of gives us a sense of structure, of self, of belonging, of understanding. It gives us a place and space in the world, which allows us to then create and co-create with the elements and the beauty of life all together. So it's looking at your story, right? I'm not 100% where everybody's from. I know that there's people that get on here from all different parts of the world, and everybody has sort of their own, way of engagement. But the individualistic world, right, which capitalism itself sort of entices, right? It entices this individualism, me, myself, and me. I am the center, and everything else is sort of outside of me, rather than we are a part of, and we are together with. And so there's this whole separation. There's also this big this ability to like just look at one side of life through the lens of maybe scientific understanding, right? Where it's kind of funny. I was reading, it was like, we're picking apart, we're getting further away. We're getting further away and further away. And what we think we know nothing at all. And we just keep going, right? So it's kind of funny when people are like, well, you're not a scientist. I'm like, yeah, thank God. I'm partially a scientist. Like I can do that kind of stuff. But thank God I'm not just that. Because just that leads to this total disconnect from the experience of life itself, right? It seeks to say, I need proof for this. But there's things that we can't prove. Like I can't prove the internal dialogue of myself. How do I prove that? Like, how do I prove that there's this thing inside my head that's communicating when I'm not communicating through my vocal cords, right? I can't really prove that, you know? I mean, they might try to tap into the brain and hear what's happening in there, but how do I prove that? That's just something that you can't do, like your thoughts, right? Good morning, Glad. When your thoughts come in, they're sort of just happening, right? It's like a flow of thought happening. And can I prove that? Well, not necessarily, unless I communicate it, right? I say, well, this is what I'm hearing in my head. But if I had no voice to speak and these thoughts were going on, how would I prove this to the external world? So there's this sort of thing that's happening that we cannot prove, right? It's funny. And then there was this guy who was talking about, the brain and stuff and asking questions about, well, how are women? And like women are just one way. And I said, look, that's not how it works. There's no exact. We all are experiencing this world. All of us are having our own unique experience of the world and how we engage it, right? And sort of everything else is sort of a social construct, right? It's like we got taught to think of it this way or to look at it that way. If we had been left to look at the world through our own lens without any external influence, right, we may not have survived, right? Because a lot of the lessons people, our parents or everybody's telling us is, how do you survive? It's really what it is, right? Other experiences may come from our experience of what feels like pleasure or doesn't feel like pleasure, right? So it's like touching a hot fire doesn't feel so great. Right? And then you take your hand off, right? Because you're like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Or ice cold, right? Doesn't feel so good. But maybe the warmth of a robe feels great, and that's an experience. It's an experience. So we're learning to experience the world and create the storyline for ourselves, right? And we have this opportunity, this golden opportunity, because we are at a time where the dialogue is shifting. And when we look at the astrological point of view, right? If we looked at, what the Mayans were telling us, even with Hinduism and all this, they understand that we are entering into a new era, meaning everything is sort of shifting, and the way that information is coming in, it's a time of technology, it's a time of great change. And because of this, right, we are reshaping the dialogue. We are recreating the dialogue. Your storyline is going to be very different. Now, you could add to the dialogue, or you could not add to the dialogue, or you can try to hold on to the old dialogue. But the old dialogue is no longer going to serve the new way that we exist in the world. It's just not going to. Something is shifting. And it's because we have so much information at our fingertips. There's so much. Now we have the opportunity to re-look at how we are engaging in the world. What storyline are we listening to? What are we paying attention to? What is the story? Is it your story, somebody else's story? Whose story? Right? And so the storyline gets to change. And guess what? You get to be the one who shifts your storyline. That's quite amazing, actually. Like, literally, it's funny because I'm looking at here and I'm like, there's like 0 people on here. I don't know if there's anyone on Facebook. Good morning to you. But there's no one on here. And it's like, it's amazing to me because I wonder if individuals are getting this information other places, which is awesome. It doesn't have to come from me, because people are going to start talking about this all over the place. This is the time, right? The time is now. The time is for us to recreate our dialogue. Look at the language we're using. Understand how we're engaging with that language and how we're using different words to describe our experience within the world. And how does that dialogue support us? Is it supporting us to create? This is the beauty, right? There should be people listening to this all over the world, because it's so powerful, right? It's so powerful for us to start to recognize that we have the power to create the dialogue. like really, truly, and to add a little piece of dialogue. So as I was writing a paper, right, for last semester, one of the things that I said was, I just hope that I can add to the dialogue, and that maybe one day, I even told this to my niece, maybe one day when I'm in my grave, people will thank me, right? Maybe they'll read something that I wrote or listen to these videos, and perhaps somehow, some way, it entices them to remember who they are, to wake up, to be a part of the new dialogue that's being created. And that's really what's happening. It is, whether people want it or not, that the entire dialogue is going to shift. So we have an opportunity to look at, the myths. And one thing that I'm doing that I'm super excited about is taking Kung Fu. And the Kung Fu class that I'm taking, it's really cool. Here's the thing. I love Kung Fu and I love doing the moves, but I'm more interested in how the myth, right, came to be into the moves. Like Kung Fu, yeah, people think Kung Fu, oh, fighting, oh, you're a badass, or Kung Fu Panda, where he's like, wah, 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 whatever. Call myself Kung Fu Panda because I'm Kung Fu Panda now. But it's the myth that comes behind it. There's a storyline, and that storyline is ingrained in the movement. It's like an expression of what the myth tells us, and it's all interconnected. Okay. And one of the things that we've done, or that I've done in the past couple days, that I want to share with you guys, is this ability to move slowly, right? We do Tai Chi. And in Tai Chi, there's like intentional walking or meditative walking. And in the meditative walking, it's to be aware of every single movement. And as you do it, and as you step, and I like what the master says. He says, you want to make sure that your foot is grounded before you put it down and you shift the weight. And it's a slow movement. And I think that this is a good lesson for life. It's not just about the movement. It's about us in general. We're constantly on the go. Go, 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 go. Sometimes we lose our footing. Sometimes we lose our grounding. Why? Because we're not sure that there's something there. And so this just says, kind of feel it out, and then put the pressure, and then take the step. So this is showing up twice, right, in my life. So apparently there's something there for me, and perhaps to share with you guys, is that we can take things slowly and make sure that we have sure footing before we put the pressure on, so that we're not falling, so abruptly, right? Not saying that falls don't happen, but if we have sure footing, it's less likely that we're going to fall. Okay. It's less likely. And so there's another walk that I was doing, and this one's even slower. It's Tibetan meditative walking. And I'm sure that they're like interlinked. Like, I think Tai Chi probably came from or derived from this Tibetan sort of way of moving through the world. It's all in Asia. Some, they all intermingled. So in this one, it's even slower. It's like you're looking at a point, and instead of seeing yourself separate from this point, you're ingrained in it. This becomes a part of you, right? It's part of who you are, right? All of you. Good morning, Esther. And so each step is mindful, and it's slow, and it's controlled, and there's breath. And as you take the breath and you walk, that your foot, when it comes up, you notice, and then you slowly put the foot down, and then you notice how you land on the foot. And it's amazing what's available for you, right? Because the class that I'm taking is called Body Consciousness, Body Wisdom, that the body itself has this wisdom inside of us. It gives us some clue. It tells us what's going on. It's quite amazing, to be quite honest. It's quite amazing, quite honest. That when we're taking these steps and we're moving, right? And we're like slowly walking, that we're mindful of each little thing that happens. And when we do, something rises in us that says, oh, what's available there? Because as I lifted my foot and as I put it down on the floor, right, I was like, wow, how am I stepping? And I noticed, right, what came up was I step different with one foot than the other. I land differently. And perhaps that is the balance, right? Hello, is this Ellie? Hi, good morning. And then I noticed that when I put the foot down and this foot down, and then I tried to switch it up and I lost my balance. It's like that's how I've learned to balance myself out, right? It may not be the best way to do it. There might be a better way to do it, and maybe I could train myself to do it more efficiently, but that's it. It's if we're not slowing down in life, if we're constantly go without really looking at the emotions of our life, right? Maybe we're not doing that as efficient, or maybe there's some wisdom available for us in that, right? And this wisdom that we can tap into that gives us some insight and tells us like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Now I could do this, right? And then you just sort of go with it and flow with it. So it's pretty interesting. There's a lot more of information there in terms of what our body has to offer us. The other practices, we're using the vocal cords to really feel into the body, like to really feel into the body. Like, how do I use tone and vibrational frequencies to sort of harmonize my body, my own vocal cords? Pretty cool stuff. Okay. So again, you create your own myth story. There's wisdom and there's tools within the body that can help you sort of understand that and move through the world. Slow down, listen, be aware. And then you can start to create and develop your own sort of storyline. What's real for you? How do you move through the world? How do you leave your legacy behind? What is it that you want to leave behind? Again, those bigger questions. Okay. So hopefully this was helpful. It seems like I don't know if anybody got on here today. Sally, I think she left though. This might be the quietest Spirit and Coffee I've ever had, which is fine. Again, here to serve, here to give back, and here to support those who need support. And so hopefully whoever needs this message takes it away. But just remember that you are part of the storyline. You do have the ability to lead the dialogue. If you're interested in any of the shamanic history or whatever, please let me know. I can send you the information for those books. But again, definitely, it's funny. Someone's like, or there was this guy who was like, I think he was a troll anyway. He's like, this is, I'm getting bored. I'm like, yeah, this information is deep and it's sometimes not fun to listen to. It's fun for me. I love it. I do it all day, every day, but it's not for everybody. It's okay. It's a little deep. I get it sometimes. So whoever's on there listening, love and light. Good morning, PBGE. Love and light, and lots and lots and lots of kisses and hugs. And it's Tuesday, and I will be on here again tomorrow, of course. And I love you guys so much. Have the most beautiful day ever. And I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.